So, chapter 36 of Isaiah is what we're going to talk about today. This chapter, and probably, I think the next four, like 36, 37, 38, and 39, these four chapters are different than what we've had so far. So, most of what we've dealt with in Isaiah has been more prophecy, things that are more prophetic that Isaiah has been doing, and lately it's been latter day prophecy. So, not as much his day, but latter day. Some of it has been kind of the same, but it's been a lot of latter day prophecy. So this is going to take a bit of a turn because now we're going to get back into Isaiah's world for the next couple of chapters and get into more history of what is going on. Remember, Isaiah has been prophesying about the Assyrian nation destroying Israel, and Israel should not side with Egypt and try to partner with Egypt to fight Assyria. And then after Assyria, Babylon will come in, and that's when it's going to get really bad if you're not careful. And then things will eventually be better. But they've got a lot of hard things to go through. So now we're going to get into some of the history of what's going on. So verse 1, now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the defenced cities of Judah and took them. Now, if you want to follow, if you go back into the historical part of the Old Testament, this is 2 Kings 18 is where you can follow along. So if you jump into 2 Kings 18, you can see more of the history there, as well as these chapters go together, basically. So verse 2, and the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem unto King Hezekiah with a great army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fuller's field. Then came forth unto him Eliakim, Hilkiah's son, which was over the house, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah, Asaph's son, the recorder. So if you remember this, okay, so Assyria, they were marching through the area, taking out lots of other places. The northern kingdom and Syria, so Assyria and Syria are two different nations. The northern kingdom sided with Syria to try to form a military alliance with their nations to fight Assyria. That didn't work. So they've taken the northern kingdoms out. They're gone. And then they're coming from Lachish. Now, Lachish is, I believe, south of Jerusalem. It's a kind of a wealthy area. It's where the wealthy Jews would hang out and live. Kind of the gated community, if you will, type idea. So they lived separate from the rest of the people, but they're the ones that owned the businesses and were in the government positions and had the wealth. And they got destroyed by Assyria, and they were taken captive. So Sennacherib is sending his representative to go from Lachish after they're dealing with that, they're wiping those people out, to go up to Jerusalem to say, you're next, basically. The problem they've had with Jerusalem is Jerusalem has a really formidable wall around it. It's a really hard wall to deal with. It's been there for a very long time. And the people there, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, they know how to defend Jerusalem. So it's a formidable area. So that's the challenge. So now they're preparing to deal with Jerusalem. So Rabshakeh comes up. He has an army with him, and they're laying siege to Jerusalem. And what that means is they surround the city, and they basically let them run out of food, let them run out of resources. When they get weak and tired, they want to give up. This is the type of military strategy that Assyria was really, really, really good at. They kind of perfected siege warfare and did an amazing job with it. So Eliakim and Shebna and Joah are three representatives of Jerusalem, and they're going to come out to talk to Rabshakeh about the deal of what's going on here, basically. So verse 4, Rabshakeh said unto them, say ye now to Hezekiah, thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, what confidence is this wherein thou trustest? So he's saying basically, why would you defy us? In what way do you believe you could win against our nation? We've been just annihilating people for years. Verse 5, I say, sayest thou, but they are but vain words. I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust, and that thou rebellest against me? Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all that trust him. So Rabshakeh knows that Israel was trying to make an alliance with Egypt. And he's like, look, that's not going to work. Egypt is no longer a world power. They are a broken reed. So if you have a reed, usually they're hollow, you break them, they can get sharp edges on them. So he's talking about if you were to lean on that reed, those sharp edges from the breaking part is just going to go into your hand and impale you. That's the problem they're going to have. And if you remember from several chapters ago, when God basically was talking with Israel about this, when God told Isaiah to warn the king, hey, you do not want to deal with Egypt. Egypt is not a world power. They act big, but they're hollow, like a reed. They're not big. They're not gonna be able to help you out. And Rabshakeh is trying to tell them that here as well. If you go back to 2 Kings, this conversation is there. It's great that Isaiah actually has preserved the letters, the conversation, the discussion between Rabshakeh and the representatives of the king, Hezekiah. So now Rabshakeh moves on and he says in verse 7, but if thou say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, it is not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah hath taken away, and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, ye shall worship before this altar. So he's now saying, look, if you think you're going to turn to your God, is that what your excuse is going to be? Hey, God is going to help us out. I know you've had many gods to deal with, and a lot of them have been taken out, and you have one true God that you worship, which is, for the Old Testament times, this is really strange. Most cultures back then, we talked about this more back in the Kings and Chronicles time frame, most cultures back then had a polytheistic philosophy of gods. Israel was monotheistic. They believed in the God and no other God. So the challenge is, a lot of these other religions believed in multiple gods. There was a god of their land. There was a god of the weather, a god of war, a god of fertility. There's usually different gods. And so if you moved, you would worship the gods of those areas. And so what he's getting at here is he's like, you think your one true God, your monotheism, which is so weird, is going to save you. In fact, in verse 8, he says, now therefore give pledges, I pray thee, to my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give thee 2,000 horses, if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon them. So now he's going, look, Egypt's not going to save you. Your political alliances are not good. They're not going to work. We've destroyed everybody else. Your God is not going to save you from us. How many gods have we destroyed throughout the land? Every one of them. So you're stuck. And he says, so I'll tell you what, let's make this easy. I'll give you 2,000 horses, which is a huge amount of resources and opportunities back then. And he says, if you can put riders on them, great. In fact, he says in verse 9, how then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? I am now come up without the Lord against this land, and am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? The Lord said unto me, go up against this land and destroy it. So he says basically, look, why rely on Egypt for chariots and horses to fight us? I will give you 2,000 horses if you surrender. You don't need to use theirs. I'll give you some of ours. We've got a ton of them. And I'll give them to you if you surrender to us, basically. And he says, and my God says to go destroy your land. So he's coming from that standpoint of, I have a divine edict to take over your land. My God is on my side and supporting me. So what is that going to mean to you, Israel? Is kind of what he's saying there. So in verse 11, then said Eliakim and Shebna and Joah unto Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language. for we understand it, and speak not to us in the Jews' language, in the ears of the people that are on the wall. Now that's interesting. If you remember again from 2 Kings, when Rabshakeh came, he spoke the Hebrew tongue. And if you think about it, he didn't need to. From being from Assyria, he's in a different language. He could have spoke his language because these three men know his language. But he's speaking the Hebrew tongue because he wants everybody to hear the threats, the challenges. He wants to hear the arguments. He doesn't want to just have it be a small conversation and the rest of the people don't know what's being said. He wants all of them to know, we are better than you. We are prepared to destroy you. You better just surrender and come over to us. He wants public opinion to work in his favor, basically. So they're asking him, can you switch over to Syrian so we can talk so that we, because we don't want everybody hearing what's going on. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so he's realizing I have an advantage with this. And so he's going to use this to his advantage. Verse 12, but Rabshakeh said, hath my master sent me to thy master and to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men that sit upon the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? So he's saying, these guys should hear it too. Why should they be denied hearing this? I want them to hear the words of my master. I want them to hear this because they are going to be destroyed. Verse 13, then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language and said, hear ye the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. So now he's not just talking to these three representatives. He's going to talk to everybody that can hear him. He's going to shout this out. Verse 14, thus saith the king, let not Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you. Again, he wants public opinion to go against Hezekiah and for Israel. This is psychological warfare happening. Verse 15, neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Hearken not to Hezekiah. For thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by a present, and come out to me, and eat ye every one of his vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink ye every one the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of corn and wine, and a land of bread and vineyards. So he's telling the people, if you surrender, you won't be destroyed. In fact, we are going to transport you to another part of our kingdom that is just as amazing as the land you have right now. And you will love it. The grass is greener on our side of the fence. It will be awesome. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. That's what he's trying to tell them. It's like, it's going to be all roses and beautiful stuff, and it's going to be amazing. But you need to surrender to us. And you need to convince your king to surrender to us. So again, that's that public opinion. It's psychological warfare. And then verse 18, he says, beware lest Hezekiah persuade you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. So this is his argument here. He says, Hezekiah is going to tell you that God will deliver you out of our hands. But I want you to think about something here. And he says, hath any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arphad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? And have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who are they among all the gods of these lands that have delivered their land out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? So he's saying, we've encountered gods of these other lands. Those same people prayed to their God for deliverance, and they didn't get it. We took them over. Even the nation, even 10 out of the 12 tribes has already been destroyed. That was Samaria that he says in there. They have delivered Samaria. So Judah is realizing that 80% of their kin, their extended family, the other part of Jerusalem, the whole tribe of Israel. So remember, there's Judah, and then there was Israel, the main northern tribes. They're gone. They are already in process of being assimilated into the Assyrian nations. They're gone. God didn't save them. So why are you going to be any different? This is what Rabshakeh is trying to get across to the people, is to say your God's not going to be any different. It's not going to be different. So he's trying to use this logic of, here's what the past has done, so the past will predict your future. Now in here, verse 21, they say, but they held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was saying, answer him not. So these three guys didn't say anything in response to Rabshakeh. So verse 22, then came Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, that was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph, the recorder, to Hezekiah with their clothes rent, and told him the words of Rabshakeh. So they came in, they broke off the conversation, and they brought the words to Hezekiah. So let's jump over to the next chapter to hear what does Hezekiah have to say back.